If you're into history and live in London, the chances are there's something interesting for you to look at on almost any street in this city. We are surrounded by history. Now, I don't just mean the big famous streets up in town. I'm walking down one road here in Peckham in South London. Now, I know what you're thinking. Peckham, Del Boy and Rodney? Well, there's much more to Peckham than that. This is a cultural melting pot with a long and diverse history. And that's defined by the people who have lived and worked here over the years. I'm going to take a walk down this road and point out some of the things that I think are interesting. Now, this part of the road is mostly residential. It's built in the late Victorian era, so we see a lot of terraces and semi-detached houses, each with their own little front garden. And that means that it was perfect for the rising middle classes who moved here in the mid-19th century. Peckham hasn't always been affluent though. Waves of immigration in the mid-20th century meant that as this area diversified, it also became poorer, and parts of the street became quite run down. There's been a bit of a mini renaissance in recent years though, and the middle classes are moving back to Peckham in their droves, and that's why we see some of these properties being brought up to the standards that they expect. The new occupants want a modern, cosmopolitan lifestyle here, and from this crossroads I can already see an arty bookshop, an organic butcher, and a few cafes. And of course, the staple of any good British high street, the pub. But we haven't got time for a drink now though. Come on. As we move down this street, we see that the buildings get taller and much more grand. And that's because they're earlier in date than the houses that we saw before. They're probably Georgian or late Victorian. Now, so far on this street, we haven't really seen anything very unusual until we get to this spot. During the Second World War, South London fell victim to the Nazi bombing campaigns, and many properties around here were destroyed. That's why we end up seeing today post-war properties sandwiched in between Georgian terraces. These little cottages are almshouses in yet another style, what looks like English Tudor architecture. They're more recent than that though. They were put here in the mid-19th century by the Girdlers Company for freemen of the City of London who'd fallen on hard times. Now, girdlers are people who've worked with metal, leather or fabric. Over on the other side of the road we find a school. Now, it was originally built as a school and it looks like most of the primary schools you find across South London. But it's also had a long and checkered life. During the Second World War it was taken over by the National Fire Service. It then went back to being a school and is now an adult education college. It's just another example of buildings taking on new lives as different people come and go. Here we can see some evidence for the changing social fabric of Peckham. Just as the Muslim community here has grown, so has the need for a new mosque. There's a real shift in tone at this point in the street, from quiet residential to busy market trading. We're fast approaching the transport and commercial hub of Peckham, and it's getting quite exciting. There's food and produce from around the world, fresh vegetables and a lot of raw meat. Here we are at the end of our street in Peckham town centre. It's a far cry from the quiet Victorian terraces we were looking at just a few minutes ago. Over my shoulder you can see a shop that was burnt out in the 2011 riots. Another reminder that we are definitely in London. For me, this is exactly why thinking about history as we're looking at the world around us is so interesting. The people who built these streets over 100 years ago wouldn't in their wildest dreams have imagined that this place would be bombed by the Nazis or play host to a mosque or a fried chicken shop. And this area is going to continue to change. Imagine what's going to be standing right here in 100 years and who is going to be living and working here then.